Okay, we've been talking about prayer for I think 3 or 4 sessions. Two of them were taking up a great deal of them were taking up with the holidays, so we really haven't focused 100% on it. I hope to conclude this unit on prayer today and start next week on Jewish history. I hope some of you will be able to find Grazel's book on Jewish history.
I called all over the city too.
No one has it?
No.
It's called The History of the Jews by Grazel. Probably can find it in the libraries. It was out of print for a long time, and then it was back in print, and there it is. We've been using it for a long time. Here. There are other books on Jewish history. I hope to be. Abba Eben's book is not too bad on it's called My People, but it's also out of print. But you can find that in the library too. And there's a couple of other books that I have been reading and checking out on Jewish history lately. So I'll let you know next week of some more titles that are available. And hopefully we'll have one in the gift shop by then. Okay. We've been talking about the Amidah. The Amidah is a fundamental prayer. And as a matter of fact, it's called Tefillah, prayer, in Judaism.
Greetings.
Come in.
Come with your own
Oh, you
chair.
had it in a fancy chair. Okay. Again, the Amidah is a very fundamental prayer because actually the basis of prayer for a human being, from the perspective of the human being, is to ask God for things. And that's what indeed the word prayer in English means. It comes from the Latin precare, which means petition. You ask God for the things that you want. And we went over that there was a series of 13 petitions in the Amidah, in the middle section. But these petitions are absent in the Sabbath service or a holiday service. You see the very same introduction to the Amidah and the same closing. The introduction contains a prayer called Avot, our fathers, which introduces, in effect, ourselves to God, talks about God as being the protector, the shield of Abraham. Okay. The second blessing in the introduction of the Amidah deals with God as being very powerful, and what's the greatest power that God displays, as shown by the signature blessing in this prayer. Who remembers that? Restores the dead to life, right? And we gave many explanations of what this can mean. Can mean what? Resurrection at the end of time, when the Messiah comes, all the righteous souls will be restored to life. Reincarnation, yes.
Or the fact that that's the wrong word, but the living soul that God
Right.
puts within humans.
That's right. That God put us a living soul within us, and it doesn't die. Doesn't die after we're dead. Continues on. So we talk about God as being very powerful, mighty. Of course, He causes the wind to blow and the rain to fall. And this past week, there's just a little too much of it. It was just sun today. It was really nice. The last blessing in the introduction talks about God's holiness. So you set yourself up in a position with God. Then you ask for the things that you want, and you close. And we went through the closing section last week. The first blessing in the close talks about gratitude. Well, actually, it doesn't. It's the second blessing. The first blessing talks about God. We ask God to accept our prayer, and blessed thou, Lord our God, who returns His Shekhinah to Zion. Who returns His Shekhinah to Zion. What's Shekhinah mean? The presence of God. The presence of God. It's a very feminine term. Very feminine term. Very closeness. The Shekhinah is the one you pray. It was what you pray to when you're crying out to God, when the tears flow. So that closeness, it shows that the Jews' connection to the land, that a part of our prayers has to be that His presence return to Zion. Then there's a prayer of thanks, which is fundamental, really. If you're going to ask for anything, you have to learn how to be grateful and say thank you. And then there's a prayer for peace. We went over all of that last week, did we not? Right? Mm-hmm. A thought came to me this morning as I was praying about that. And in that prayer for peace, it talks about God's light, which is a very strong metaphor. It's a page 116, something like that.
Yeah.
The Art Scroll Siddur. Does everybody have a prayer book? Just listen if you don't. Establish peace, goodness, blessing, graciousness, kindness, and compassion upon us and upon all your people, Israel. Bless us, our Father, all of us, with the light of your countenance. For with the light of your countenance you gave us, Hashem our God, the Torah of life, loving kindness, a love of kindness, righteousness, blessing, compassion, life, and peace. Doesn't sound like very much in the English, does it? I mean, they're just flowery words, but there's a lot here. Bless us, our Father, all of us as one, with the light of your countenance. Actually, it means face. What is the face of God? Well, it doesn't really have a face. The light is an emanation from God. We talked about this a great deal in my Tuesday night class. And God said, let there be light in this earth. There was no sun. What kind of light was it? First of all, and also, where did it come from? Because when God creates, throughout the story, He says, let there be this. When it's made from something else. So where did the light come from? The light was an emanation directly from God. A very strong light. A very powerful light. And a light that we can see.
Is that the light?
But it's not easy to see. It's what?
Is that the light you see at the end of the tunnel?
Right. Those people who had an after-death experience went through a rose above their body, went through a dark tunnel and saw that light, and they basked in that light, and they didn't want to leave when they were told to go back because it wasn't their time. That's that light. You could be privileged to see that light in your lifetime, but that light was hidden, put away for another time. If you meditate, you have a chance to see that kind of light. And hopefully those attending our meditation classes on Tuesday night will have a chance to see that.
Is that guaranteed?
Takes time, takes work. Doesn't happen all at once to everybody. Can happen.
What's the difference between focusing and meditation?
Meditation is focusing. It's just the proper. It's focusing in a certain way. Anyway, so what comes from God's light? Well, it says, "Blessed is our Father, all of us is one with the light of your countenance. For with the light of your countenance you gave us, Hashem our God. What comes from the light? Torah, love of kindness, righteousness, blessing, compassion, life, and of course the blessing is about peace. So this is the benefit that comes from the light. People who have seen that light and experienced it, and do experience it, their lives change. They're different. They begin to absorb much of this. But one of the elements that are necessary in order to be able to see that light, to feel it, came to me this morning. Why is the blessing for being grateful and giving thanks right before this? Because that's one of the key ingredients. Unless you could be truly grateful for what you have and appreciate what you have, you're never going to see the light. Never going to see it. It's not going to be part of you because you're just stuck somewhere. You're stuck on yourself. You can't see that what you have to you is a gift from God. So anyway, and there are two times in the Amidah where you can add your own prayers. On the last of the petitions, which is on page 108, 109, we ask God to hear our prayers. And there we add our own prayer. Or at the end of the Amidah, when it's all done, on page 118, before you say the closing refrain, you also add your own prayers, and you should. And every time you say it, add a special prayer. Someone who's sick that you know, for something you may need or want in life, or you need help with, add your prayers. When you finish the Amidah, you take 3 steps back. I mentioned that last week, right? Why do we take 3 steps back? What? Dismiss yourselves from God. Where does that custom come from? God is king, and you go before a king. You take a step back. It's sort of a sign of respect.
Well, the king gets it from us. We don't get it from the king.
King gets what from us?
That respect.
Well, we have
God
to show it
first.
to him. We have to show it
God
to him.
first.
Okay. I could spend a lot of time in the Amidah, but I told you that I would spend time just on the first paragraph. I really would like everybody who doesn't have a copy of this?
What?
Have a sitter. Who doesn't have a sitter with them? How many do we need? Let's get them. All right, we need 1,
You better send the girl.
1, 2, 3.
Better send the girl.
We need 10.
Oh my God.
Okay. I'm going to spend the rest of our time today going over this first blessing of the Amidah in detail, and then I'm going to go over the Shema in detail with you. Of course, I could spend a whole lesson going over 4 words in this blessing, and I could spend a whole lesson going over the 6 words of the first line of the Shema. And when we do one of my breakfasts that I have with the 2nd grade, I will go over those 6 words in more detail, and I hope you'll attend that. During the year when we have breakfasts for the Hebrew school children, most of those breakfasts are geared to to the kids and to their parents, and it would certainly be fine if you attended, and I hope you will. Okay. I urge you, really, all of us, even those who are very, very weak in Hebrew, to try to put to memory this entire prayer. And once you're able to do that, and to learn a few key words here and there, it'll become very, very strong.
Isn't the Shema the whole thing, the Friday?
The Shema is in the Friday.
I meant the whole prayer.
Yeah, this is in every service. This prayer is in every service.
Where can you get a copy of it phonetically?
Phonetically,
That's what I meant.
we have transliteration booklets. Actually, we ran out.
Oh.
Many of you have been so good in taking them home to study with. We ran out of transliteration booklets for the Saturday morning service, and they'll be reprinted and hopefully with a whole new group of copies for this Saturday. Friday night service we have transliterated. We have even the weekday morning service transliterated. So if you need transliterations for almost anything, we have it.
Got 3 translated.
Right. Okay. There's an introduction to the Amidah. See those little small lines above the first lines in Hebrew 98? It says, Adonai Savosai Tivtach Afi Agiti Lasecha. My Lord, open my lips that my mouth shall declare your praise. It's a little prayer that your prayers will go all right. You know? But before, that's like when a guest speaker comes to to a banquet or something. He says, before I begin my speech, I'd like to say a few words. That sort of thing. Okay. And then when you say that, that's the time to take you 3 steps back before God. And most people take 1 step forward because they can't keep going back and there's no room. What is the proper position to pray in? Feet together, right? Knees slightly bent, and your head slightly bent, because if you're going to somebody to ask for a big favor, you go to before a king that you just you're in like a humble position, and this is a humble position. Of course, when your head is slightly bent, where does it focus? Right here, the solar plexus. And we said the other day that's a very important place because why? Right, solar plexus is the repository of the soul, right here. When a person says, we ask a person, when you ask a group of people to call out a name, who's Mark? Hi, Mark. Where they point? They point here, right here. That's where the repository of the soul supposedly is. Okay. First 3 words are very important. This is the bowing. We went over this a little bit last week. Baruch means what? Where does that come from? 2 things I explained to you. There's Hebrew word brecha, which means knee. Berach, which means knee. So that's where we bend the knee. And brecha is a spring. Spring. God is the source of all blessing. What does it mean? So we went over the problem of what does it mean to bless God, right? By what we do, we bless God. If we follow His laws, that's true. But we're acknowledging here, we're saying a blessing over God. We're also mainly acknowledging He is the source of all blessing. All His blessings. All the blessings of the world spring from Him, and the knee is sort of the spring of things. That's where we spring, walk. So Baruch we bend, Atah, which is you, we bow, and we have the strong focus right there towards the you, towards God. It's like a computer network. They're all connected to the main frame. So you're looking on your screen here, right? That's your screen to the main frame. That's your connection to God. Not that the God's there, right? That would be almost idolatry. But that's how you find God, through your soul.
You're in it, though.
Right. And we mention God's name, we come up. Okay, take a look at God's name, because that's going to be important for the rest of this prayer. Doesn't have any vowels to it, right? It's usually vowelized in such a fashion that they take the vowels of the Hebrew word Adonai, which means my Lord, and they put it on the Yud Hey Vav Hey to teach us what? That's how we're supposed to say it. Read it, Adonai. Actually, I shouldn't say it, I should say Hashem. But then you wouldn't know exactly what I was talking about. So for educational purposes, I can say it. Sometimes you see the vowels E under the Yud Hey Vav Hey to teach us that Adonai is not the correct pronunciation, but Elohim. Usually that happens when you have the word Adonai spelled out, Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud, and then have the 4-lettered name of God. And you shouldn't repeat that name, God's Adonai, twice, saying that there are 2 lords in this world. Only one time do we have that, is when God Himself repeated it twice in the Torah. And that's a subject for another time. But God's name is 4 letters. We don't know how to pronounce it. As I said yesterday in my sermon, it was pronounced by the high priest once a year on Yom Kippur when he came out of the Holy of Holies, or it went into the Holy of Holies to pray on behalf of the Jewish people. and his all the Kohanim on behalf of the world for peace for the coming year. But nevertheless, we know this is God's name, and it's very, very fundamental because there's a lot that's represented here. One thing I mentioned to you before, it's got a hey ending. The Hebrew letter that ends God's name is a hey. Hey ending is a feminine ending. It's a feminine ending. That doesn't mean that God's name is feminine. Actually, you could divide it up and say some of the letters represent the masculine side of God, the first two perhaps, and the last two represent the feminine side of God, because God has both sides to Him, just as we have, each of us has a feminine and a masculine side. But what do you think of when you say God's name, when you pray? What do you imagine in your mind? Do you imagine an old man sitting up in heaven with a long gray beard on a big throne with a bunch of, cherubim, or little fat childlike angels with wings and the halos above their heads, and like Christian views of things? What do you imagine when you think of God, when you pray?
I feel a big heavy cloud over me.
Okay, you imagine a cloud. Anybody else? Light, okay? But that's hard to focus on and see. If you could see the light when you do, and you've gone a long way. Seriously.
I imagine it more than I see it out there.
Well, you could, if you close your eyes and you could see it, you're doing good. You're doing real good. Actually, the sages of Kabbalah have taught us that one of the things that we could do to really help our prayers when we say God's name is just to imagine the letters. Just to imagine the letters as being representative of God. The Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. That's why this Siddur is written like this, without any vowels on God's name. So you should imagine the letters. It's very hard to understand when you talk about letters. You'll hear all kinds of fantastic statements about letters in Jewish lore. That God created the alphabet and then He created the world with the Aleph Bet. Well, that sounds like a fancy story you tell children. But what does that mean? I talked about this in my class on Tuesday night. Remember? It says in the Torah, the first three words, Bereshit, bara, Elokim. In the beginning, God created. The next word, et. What does et mean? Et has no meaning. But et is spelled Aleph Taf. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet, and Taf is the last letter. So sages of Kabbalah teach us that God created the Aleph Bet, from Aleph to Taf. And Bereshit teaches us the creation of time. Bara teaches us the creation of energy. Elokim is God's name. In the beginning, God created time and energy. I mean, not energy, I mean matter. It was a primal matter. It didn't have any structure. As a matter of fact, I didn't mention this in the class, and I'm going to mention more about this next time. Scientists, the Big Bang theory, have shown that originally, the matter that was originally created was not the kind of matter that we commonly know. It wasn't atoms with atomic structure. It couldn't be, because the heat was too intense. So what was it? Plasma. Something called plasma. Plasma is that kind of primal matter. It has no structure or form to it. But all matter as we know it exists as we know it because it has a structure which is ordered by number. By number. We have within ourselves we have certain chromosomes and DNA, and that's those are specific numbers. We have everything has certain amount of this has a certain amount of carbon atoms and a certain amount of silicon atoms and a certain amount. That's how it's structured, and each atom is structured with a certain amount of proteins and protons and neutrons and electrons and that sort of thing. The numbering is what gives it its structure. And it's so where the numbering comes from. Because Aleph Bet is the numbering also, because every letter in the Hebrew alphabet represents a number. So that's what the sages meant when they said in the beginning God created the Aleph Bet, and then from there He created the world. What did He do with it? He gave the structure, the numbering, to the plasma that was created. So letters do have a very strong power to them. That was just one small example. The name of God, the 4 letters there are very powerful. It means the verb that it comes from undoubtedly is the verb to be. In the Hebrew, when you say something is, it's hoveh. Something was, it's hayah. And something will be, it's yehiyeh. I write it down for you, but I don't have a blackboard. And if God's name is a combination of all the letters composed in these 3 things. So God was, God is, and God always will be. He's the source of everything. So imagining the letter can be a very powerful focus in prayer. And I would urge you, if you have no other thing to focus on when you imagine God, this is something to do. God is Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu. He's the God of Elokeinu. He's our God and the God of our fathers. Now, the whole rest of the prayer could be structured around God's name, assigning each word to a letter.
What are the 4 letters?
Yeah, it's right there.
Why don't we
Yud, Hey, and Vav, and Hey. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. Those are the 4 letters.
up there?
Right there.
Can Arlene copy this, please?
Copy what?
What you're talking about? Have I written
It's not written out. It's not written out anywhere because this is something that I've come up with on my own over the past 2 or 3 years.
Well, we respect what you've come up with.
Okay, so I haven't written it out yet. When I write it out, you'll get it. Okay.
What are you talking about this day?
What I'm about to say. The rest of the first paragraph here can be structured around the 4 letters, signing each word one of those 4 letters, and they come in groups. Sometimes the groups are seem like don't completely seem to fit together perfectly, but I could show that there is a unity to that. Now, Elohei Abraham, the God of Abraham, will go to the Yud. Elohei Yitzchak, the God of Isaac, will go to the Hey. Elokei Yaakov, and the God of Jacob, will go to the Vav, 3rd letter, and the word Ha'el, which means the God, in the short form, will go to the final Hey. I wish I had a blackboard to show you this on. I've never really taught this before, so we'll see how it goes. The Yud is a very powerful letter, the first letter of God's name. It's the smallest letter we have. And yet there's so much been written about it that the tip of the Yud is used to create much of the world. I mean, it's fantastic. I won't go into the strong mystical meaning of each of the letters. It's just too much to do right now. But if you attend my classes over the years, you'll hear about it. And I have talked about it when we did the Aleph Bet for a whole year. So, God of Abraham is the Yud. God of Isaac is the Hey. The God of Jacob is the Vav. And Ha'el, the word Ha'el, is the Hey. They come together as a unit. Why do we say the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob? Why don't we just say the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob? This is a very famous question that the rabbis ask.
God differently?
Because the God of Abraham is not the same as the God of Isaac. What do you mean it's not the same? It's the same God. One God. But actually, everyone experiences God in a unique way. I should never fully describe to you my experiences that I have with God, because you'll be looking for the same things in your experience. But you have to come to God in your own way. You have to find God on your own, and you're going to have a unique type of experience that'll be different than mine. By doing that,
Our wants and needs are different.
that's it's for sure, and everybody's different. So, in essence, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob were all different in that they experienced God differently, but together, it was what? Ha'el. It was the God. It was God. Together, coming together, it was God. That's why Abraham, Yud, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the first three letters, and the last letter, Ha'el, God, all of them coming together comprise what God is, that kind of experience. They each had unique experiences such unique experiences that together they were God. We have to go back to this when we go to the next couple, because it just comes very strong. Hagadol, Hagibor, Vahanora, El Elyon. See if you can follow me. I'm at the end of the second line, and in the English, Hagadol, he says the great and mighty. Gadol means the great. Hagibor is mighty. Vahanora is awesome. And El Elyon is the supreme God. Now I'm focusing on word after word, and the English doesn't seem to have the power of the Hebrew, but I'll try to bring it out for you.
What did Ha'el mean?
God.
That's another way of saying
The God. He doesn't even deal with it. Yeah, he says the great and mighty and awesome God. You see that? The word God, I'm putting at the beginning.
Okay.
At the beginning, going before. Because in Hebrew it is in the beginning. I'm glad you pointed that out. The great, the mighty, and the awesome. Well, first of all, God is great. He's the greatest there is. He's mighty. He's as strong as there is. And he's awesome, because just experiencing a little God will just fill with awe. But let's go back. The great corresponds to the Yud, mighty to the Hey, second letter, awesome to the Vav, and the supreme God to the final Hey, fourth letter. How does that couple up with the first couple we made? The great goes to Abraham, the mighty goes to Isaac, and the awesome goes to Jacob. Right? And the supreme God go back to God, which was the fourth couple before. How does that match up? Why does that match up? These are traits, specific traits of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Great, mighty, and awesome. Abraham had a great deal of greatness about him. If you read yesterday's Torah portion carefully, you would be amazed at the greatness of this man. Here's a man who's 75 years old, left his home, left his career, his extended family, because he took his wife and didn't have any children, and he took his nephew. But the rest of the family he left behind. He left wealth and position and power and everything, and he went to a new career at 75 years old. Right? He settled in this new land and became very well respected and honored among all these people. When Lot, his nephew, was taken captive, because there was a war between 4 kings and 5 kings, and the 4 kings won, he went out, raised an army. I mean, he was no youngster. I think he was in his middle 80s. And he, became a great warrior, and defeated these 4 kings and defeated the 5 kings. Comes back from the war, he meets this guy Malki Tzedek. What an incredible guy. He was not Jewish, but the Torah describes him as a Kohen Le'el Elyon. He is a Kohen to the God on high, which means he is a very holy man, but not Jewish. One of the things that this teaches us is you don't have to be Jewish to be very holy. And but he sees him, he comes out to greet him, and in gratitude, and Abraham recognizes his stature as a great holy man, gives him 1/10 of the spoils from the war. Now, he doesn't keep anything himself. He gives it all back to the king of Sodom, for instance, and the other kings. He lets the warriors who came with him take that he managed to get from alliances to take their part of the spoil, but he doesn't take a thing. The king of Sodom comes and says to him, "Please, you can take all the booty from the war. Just give me my people back." What was Abraham's response? "I won't take a shoelace from you, not even a shoelace, that you should ever say that I've made Abraham rich." This is one of the things that the Jew doesn't want anything for the rest of the world. They want to be left alone, and they want to make sure. But there was the greatness of this man, how well respected he was. It's really unbelievable. He faced a world that was completely pagan with a new idea of God. And the word Hebrew, what does the word Hebrew mean? The word Hebrew means...
Does it relate to a one God or a spiritual God?
Hebrew comes in Hebrew avar. Avar means to cross over. He's the one who crossed over the Euphrates River because he left Mesopotamia behind. But it means more than that. He crossed over. He left the paganism behind. And he faced the world by himself. But he faced the world by himself. The whole world was pagan and vehemently so, and he faced this world by himself. The greatness of this man was wonderful. So, great refers to the Yud and to Abraham. It connects. Mighty refers to Isaac. What do we know about Isaac? Isaac was a very interesting man. He tried to avoid conflict whenever he could. We know that he probably was traumatized by this incident that we read on Rosh Hashanah, where he's almost sacrificed on Mount Moriah. His father takes him up there. But if you take a look at in Hebron, the tomb of the patriarchs, where they're all buried, and the matriarchs, except for Rachel, his tomb was the largest. Isaac's tomb was the largest. He has a might about him. What was so mighty about him? The Talmud teaches Ezehu Gibor, who is truly a Gibor, who is truly mighty. Hakovesh et Yitzro, one who can conquer his desires, become master over his desires. You desire food that's not kosher. You can master yourself. Food's not important. I'm important in this world, and I could be master over my desires. You're a married man, and you see a lot of attractive women, and you find that it might be very easy to make an entry there. But you're a master over your desires. That's not really what's important in this world. You have to determine what's important. You have to be kovesh et yitzro. This is the hardest thing in the world to do, is to conquer your desires. And Isaac was able to do that. Isaac was able to lead a simple life and continue living Jewish life without any threats. Right? It's easy to be a Jew when you're threatened. Get you back up. Right? You fight. 1967, Jews came out of the closets. People you never thought were Jewish, because they would do. I don't know, many of you were too young to remember those days. But in the 67 war, right before it, Israel was surrounded, and we thought this was going to be it. And literally, Jews came out of the closet. We stood up to be Jewish because our backs got up because we were threatened. and Abraham was constantly threatened, and Jacob was constantly threatened. Isaac lived a life without threat. But it's much harder to be a Jew in the world without threat. When is the assimilation occurring in this world? It's becoming when the Jews are not physically threatened anymore. Right? That's why we have this incredible. We have, 5.5, 6 million Jews in America, but only 3.5 million identify themselves as Jews. And
on the other hand, in the 50s, everyone identified as Jews, but there was no Jewish content to it. It was just everyone was pulling together against the threat.
that's right.
Nobody talked
And
about
there was
God,
only
they talked
and there was
about
only
all
5%
the
intermarriage in the 50s.
But
Now
was
it's
that better?
Now it's 52%, and if you take away the Orthodox community, it's probably closer to 75%. Is it better? Of course not. That's my point. It's the hardest thing when you're not threatened to really find. You have to work hard at it to find the joy in being Jewish. To conquer all your desires to be like everybody else, and to do all the other things in this world. That's what Isaac was able to do, and that's why he's called. That's why he lines up with the might. Jacob lines up with the awe. The awesome. That's a good word for our kids today. Awesome, dude. But it does have profound meaning in itself. Jacob's experience were filled with awe. Jacob, when he ran away from home to escape his brother's wrath, had this great dream. And he dreamt of a ladder connecting heaven and earth with angels going up and down. That was a hell of a dream, filled with awe. And a lot to say about that dream. There's a whole book. We have it in the library. God was in this place that I didn't know. I think it's called. It's like 10 interpretations from 10 different people about that dream, that experience. But one of the things I'll point out to you simply is I would urge you to read it. It's got an awful lot to teach all of us spiritually. The ladder, the Torah says, was standing in the ground, was planted in the ground, and the top reached to heaven. So in order to get to heaven, though, we need to construct ladders in our lives that are planted on the earth. Planted in real reality. If you want to reach the spiritual heights, you have to be rooted. You have to be grounded on the earth. Firmly grounded. That's important. What other experiences did Jacob have in his life that was filled with awe?
He wrestled with the angel.
Right. That's why his name was changed. He was coming back home. His brother was coming to greet him with 400 foot soldiers. He thought he was going to be wiped out. He couldn't sleep that night. The brother was coming in the morning. Divided his camp in two and went off in the wilderness, and he was mugged, and he wrestled with that angel, with that whoever it was, the entire night. And then the angel, whoever it was, said, "Let me go. Because the dawn is coming, and I have to go." He said, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." And he said, "No longer will your name be Jacob, but it will be Israel, Kisarita, Imelok, because you wrestled with God and with man and have prevailed." It must have been a terribly awesome experience. There's great meaning there. We as Jews who were named Israel after him have wrestled with God ever since, have had reason to doubt like he had that night. But nevertheless, we wrestled with God and won. And that's part of the awesome experience of life, to be able to wrestle with God and to prevail and to find God. So he connects up with the awe. Jacob connects with the awe, which is the third letter of God's name.
But God lets you do it.
Yeah, he's there for you. Okay. I'll spend a lot of time on this prayer, and I don't know how much is really going to sink in. I'm just trying to show you that every word here has strong impact. And And if you, in the end, I'm going to show you just 4 words that you can really focus on to really make a difference. But I just want to show you every word strong. And if you can memorize it and memorize the meanings of these words, it could be truly awesome. Okay. Okay. The next, there's another coupling of 4. Gomer chasadim tovim, who bestows beneficial kindness. That relates to the Yud. V'koni akol, and creates everything. That relates to the Hey. V'zocher chasdei avot, that relates to the Vav, who recalls the kindness of the patriarchs. V'mevi goel livnei v'nehem l'man shemo b'yava, and brings the Redeemer to the children's children for his namesake with love. Now, that relates to the final letter. What I want to point out here is that if you divide God's name in half, it's a Yud, Hey, a Vav, and a Hey. If you divide it in half, the Yud, Hey on one side, and the Vav, Hey on the other, you could say the right side is generally a more masculine side, and the left side is generally more feminine. In deeper Kabbalah, things mix up a lot, but I just, for the simplicity of it, I just want to make that point. So the right side is the masculine side. Gomel chasadim tovim v'konei hakol. He bestows beneficial kindness and creates everything. Well, God is the creator, the former of things. It's sort of a masculine type of. The woman is really. The Hebrew is not create. It's a kona. It acquires. It's not creates. It acquires. Gomer chasadim tovim. He bestows beneficial kindness. Like he's the one who's giving. He's the giver, right? That's a masculine trait. Is the giver, and the feminine trait is the receiver. And that happens in a sexual relationship. The man gives, the woman receives, and that's more. It's of course it's generalization, but it's a definite characteristic. God bestows beneficial kindness and. Now here comes the feminine side. The Zocher Chazdei Avos, he recalls, remembers the kindnesses of the patriarchs. You know, he's looking for an excuse, or she, it's the feminine side. She's looking for an excuse to be good to us. Well, isn't that a motherly type of thing, you know? Looking for an excuse to be good to your kids, any excuse. She looks for the kindnesses of their fathers, right? You know. Any excuse.
Keep them quiet.
Who will bring a redeemer to the children and children's children for his name's sake with love. With love, she's going to save. She's going to save. Not because you deserve it, because of sheer unqualified love. That's motherly love. Unqualified love. That's the feminine side. That's the Hey. Relates to the Hey, and you can go right back up the top, and you can and I can show you that on Abraham, Isaac, masculine side, Jacob is shows much more feminine traits in having those awesome experiences with God, and those attributes, great, mighty, and awesome. Great and mighty is more the masculine side. And awesome, you know, when they experience the Shekhinah, that's more of the feminine side. It relates. Now here come the big 4 words. If you're not going to remember any of the 4 words, these are the 4 words to focus on. I learned this from Aryeh Kaplan in his book Jewish Meditation. A little thin book. You know, it's like $5 or $6 or something. It's a great book, and there's 2 chapters in there, one on the Shema and one on this first paragraph of the Amida. It blew me away. These 4 words: Melech, Ozer, Moshia, U'Magen. King, helper, savior, and shield. I spend a good minute on those 4 words. And if I'm in a hurry, I'll spend a half a minute. Still a long time. How long does it take me to say? Melech Ozera Moshiach Magen. 3 seconds. Right? At least half a minute or so. Each of these are terms of increasing closeness to God. And this is something that you should try to focus on when you say this first paragraph of the Amida. By the way, our sages said, if one says the Amida and does not understand what's happening in this first paragraph, doesn't understand the meaning of the words, and it doesn't have any focus or concentration on the words, it just says it by rote, it's like you didn't say the whole thing, the whole rest of the Amida. This paragraph has to have focus and direction. You must understand it. So, when you say it in Hebrew, say it in English. I mean, you've got to know what you're doing here. It's very important to understand that there is a God in the world, the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's simple enough. And on the characteristics of great, mighty, awesome. And he's bestowed kindness and creates everything. And he calls the kindness of our patriarchs and brings a Redeemer with love. Now, these 4 words. He's the king. Well, king is kind of distant, you know. If you need help from a king, it's not easy to get there. You got to go to the gate of the palace. You got to knock on the door. You got to, you know, the guard will say, "Just wait there. I'll talk to a supervisor," you know, and supervisor talks to his supervisor. Till you get to the king, it's not easy, right? The king is God's the king of the world. He sets the rules, but he's not so approachable as king. Right? You want him to change the rules as king? Tough. King can do it, but it's tough to get to him. But he is our king. You must recognize that. He sets the rules. Then he's an Ozer. He's a helper. What's a helper? Helper is somebody. We ask for help, and he helps us. Simple. We ask for help, and he helps us. But there's a different kind of asking for help in the next word, Moshiach, Savior. We're really in trouble. When we're really down, sometimes we may not even know how to ask for help. Sometimes we may not even know how down we are. How just totally out of it we are, how unconnected we are, how far away we are from God, how much in trouble we are. And he'll save us. The near miss in the car. I had a congregant yesterday come up to make a bench gomel. What's bench gomel? You have a brush with death or danger. And you come up in the Torah and you say a prayer thanking God. Right? What happened to him? He was riding his bicycle. He's a man in his late 50s, maybe early 60s. He's riding. He loves to ride bikes. So he's riding down this hill. He loses control of the bike, smashes into this wall, flips him over the wall, and he lands on a soft bed of vegetation, and nothing happens to him but a little scratch over here.
Wow.
Talk about Savior. Someone was watching over him. I mean, you know, he isn't 12 years old, you know, like you just jump up and, you know, things are, you know, bones are just very, very, very bendable and stuff, you know. God watches over us. How many near misses we have? We don't even know about the near brushes that we have with death. God's our Savior. He watches over us. And which relates, coming in, part of that comes into the next one, he's a Magen. He's Magen. He's our shield. He's our shield.
So are you saying that as our Savior, we don't even necessarily have to ask him for help, he's there? I mean, he's just there, he's going, he knows.
There are 4 stages. He's the king, right? King is hard to approach though, but it can be. And then we ask for help, and he'll respond. That's an Ozer, that's a helper. Then there's a Mashiach, there's a Savior. who will save us when we're in trouble, right? Whether we ask or don't ask sometimes. And then there's the last one. There's the shield. You know, we got a force field surrounding us. You develop yourself spiritually, and you feel like your soul is 6 feet all around you, and you walk around with that shield. And I mean, I wouldn't advise this to anybody, but I know people who have gone into the inner city and during riots in New York and Los Angeles, and to Harlem and places like that. And these weren't Jewish people, but highly spiritual people, mystical people, who just walked right through there and went in to help. And right in the middle of the riots, the people came up to them as if they were going to be very violent, but when they got in their presence, they just walked away from it. There's something about them, they walked away from it. It's that sort of thing. To protect, a shield is created around it. But you know, what's necessary for the shield to be there? This is a very important concept. Because you know, you get to situations like 2 weeks ago at Charles Schutter's on Saturday night. A woman turns to me, and I have a short question. One more question, Rabbi, because he asked questions about the Torah reading then. One more question, Rabbi. I said, well, it's getting late. Short question. How could God allow the Holocaust to happen? Short question.
Not long, but not a
short question. God protect me from those short questions. Right? There's a concept which is fundamental called Hester Panim, turning of the face. That if we abandon God, that God sometimes will turn his face. What does that mean? It means he won't be up, the shield won't be up. You know? The force field won't be there. Shields are down. You know? Not 40% down, they're down. God turns his face, then you're vulnerable. Whatever can happen to you can happen to you. God's not there.
So
But
is that the implication that the Jews in Germany in the 30s were?
I'm saying to you, there are times in Jewish history, and we're going to talk about Jewish history in the next unit, where there's a Hester Panim, turning of the face. And it's very hard to explain exactly why that is. Okay? Obviously, the Holocaust was an example of a Hester Panim, of a turning of the face. God's shield wasn't there. And we cry out, why? And it's very hard to answer that. I mean, I will not attempt to give a definitive answer. The only definitive answer is for that is in the Torah. If Kabbalah teaches every verse of the Torah corresponds to a year in history. I mentioned this a few times, right? And there are 5,845 verses in the Torah. The world is supposed to exist, as we know, after 6,000 years. Don't ask me what's going to happen after the 5,845. I don't know. But the year for 1944, the end of the Holocaust, was the secrets belong to the Lord your God, and the things that are revealed belong to us. This is the only thing that really you could say about the Holocaust, because it's a secret. Why God turns his face is a secret. However, I will say this. The Jewish communities of Europe weren't as idyllic before World War II as we seem to think they were. We remember that with great fondness the Shtetl of Eastern Europe, in Europe where Jews were so pious and lived such great lives, but Jews were abandoning Judaism by the tens and hundreds of thousands between the world wars in Europe. Is this a reason for God turning his face? I didn't say that. I didn't. God forbid I should say that.
But what about the man that was, holy and spiritual and was also, slaughtered?
Swept up,
I mean,
yeah.
Is that what happened to
When
that
God turns
shield?
his face in history, things happen to innocent people. And the only way Kabbalah deals with this is through reincarnation. And that's why the Panovitcher Rebbe says that today there's an unprecedented movement in Jewish history. Never happened ever where there have been so many Jews returning to Judaism who have gone away and come back to it. Never ever happened like this in Jewish history. And there's so many non-Jews seeking to become Jews. So he says that many of these are souls
He brought back.
who were brought back from the Holocaust who really didn't, deserve a second chance.
Is God's face turned away now?
I don't know.
I mean, is there
Obviously-
anything in the
Obviously,
Torah
yeah.
that would
I can't.
tell us?
I mean, the magnitude of terrible events in the world today does not suggest that. It suggests just the opposite. If you take a look over the past 10 years, the miraculous things that have happened in this world are just incredible. The whole world changed. Communism is gone. The Berlin Wall has fallen. Yasser Arafat shook hands with Yitzhak Rabin. I mean, things have happened in this world that are just remarkable. And I would say, I'm not saying that God is behind all of them, but what I am saying is that it doesn't seem to suggest that God's turning His face right now. Yes.
It almost feels comparable to saying God turned His face and that's why there was a Holocaust, or God's turning His face and maybe that's why there's AIDS. Making that kind of a judgment. I'm not saying that that's true, obviously, none of us know that, but that almost is kind of on that level, like people are, because there's people that say, well, if people didn't behave a certain way, they wouldn't have AIDS. There's lots of folks that have said that.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Oh, I know you did. I know
God forbid. God
It's
forbid.
comparable.
I know many people who are completely innocent victims of the AIDS epidemic. There are too many of them, and to even say that.
There's always a
But I would not make a comparison of AIDS to the Holocaust. I mean, AIDS is a terrible thing, but it's not the same as the Holocaust. In dimensions of the tragedy, compare it to the Holocaust. It's tragic and terrible, but it's not. You're talking about 6 million people, a million and a quarter children. The systematic annihilation of an entire people. I mean, this is. I mean, it's. You can't point to every scourge and plague and difficulty in the world and say the guy's turning his face right now.
That's what I was trying to understand.
Right. But the dimensions of the Holocaust was such that we could say that. It doesn't look like I'm going to get to the Shema. I'm going to complete this. Then we say, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, O Lord, shield of Abraham. Now, when I pray this, and I get to, even if the whole first part of the paragraph is, I can go through quickly. I try to do it slowly, and just sometimes my mind is not there. Sometimes I'm thinking about something someone said to me in the synagogue, or about what I should be doing here or there, or a baseball strike, or I don't know. I don't think about that anymore. But I try, at least on those 4 words, to really focus and concentrate. I close my eyes and I say Melech. I say it. God is King. I say it so slowly. I say each of those letters. Each of Melech. I try to do it with some sort of melody, but I stretch it out so even that word is like 15 seconds. Why? I can give you just very quickly. Mem represents Mayim, water, which is the source of life. The letter itself. God is the source of life. Lamed represents Limud, which is study, learning. God is the source of knowledge. Chaf, Melech. Chaf is Keter. Keter is the crown of God. The crown comes about because God is crowned as king. Why? Because he's the source of life and he's the source of knowledge. That's what composes the. You know what I'm saying? You can even break down these things even further and further and further. There's meaning and meaning and meaning and meaning. So I say it real slowly. I could take, I told you, 30 seconds to a minute on those 4 words. Focusing about God is King. What does it mean that God is King? Just think about that. God is our helper. I need help. God, please, I need help. I need help with this, and so and sick. And then you get to Moshiach. He's our Savior. And I reserve that for what I think really needs saving in this world. Someone who may be deathly ill. Peace in the Middle East. Whatever you think of the real ultimate crises of life. Focus on that thing. And Magain. And when I take Magain, you see me pray with my hands out like this, right? I explained that last week. So it's sort of a satellite receptacle of God's light. I say Magain, I go like this. And I'll tell you why. When I do it like this, I sort of feel the shield around me. I want to feel it. Now, do a little exercise for you. Take a minute. If everybody could just put whatever's in their laps. Let's settle down somewhere. You can put it on your lap, I don't care. Take your hands and rub them together. Nice and warm. And what I want you to do, keep rubbing, you just close your eyes and pull your hands together like this, and stop when you feel some resistance. Okay? Close your eyes, pull your hands together, and stop when you feel some resistance. Yeah, most of you you'll feel it. Okay, stop. There's something there, isn't there? Well, you rub your hands together because they make it more sensitive, right? But you feel that there's something there. Because there's a shield around all of us. You can photograph it. Carillion photography, right? I'm saying you could tangibly feel it. And I try to feel it when I'm saying this word. God is our protector, and it creates a very warm, strong feeling within me to really feel that protective shield of God when I'm praying. And it takes a little practice, a little work, but you can do it. So if you're not, the problem is when you're so encumbered by the words, and when you hold in the book, you can't do that. It's very hard, and that's why I try to find a place I can put the book down. It's not so easy. You try to balance it on the back of the other chair, and you fall over. That's why I like the fact in Israel when you go in the all the synagogues in Israel, they have a little stender, a little desk in front of each chair. The book sits, right, and there's a little compartment inside. People put their things, if you have your definite seat, you get your little place so you can even lock it and put your special prayer book or talus or whatever you need in there. So this is what I do, basically, with this first prayer of the Amida. It's for all of you who are not so fluent. I would urge you at least learn that one line in Hebrew. Those 4 words, Melech Hozera Moshiach Magain, with the blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai Magain Abraham, blessed you, O Lord, shield of Abraham. Learn those 4 words with the blessing. Say it in English, then focus on those 4 words. On those 4 words. Begin to feel the power of them. When you can begin to feel that God is your shield, and you begin to feel that shield around you, the rest of the prayer, you're ready. You're ready to say the rest of it. You're getting there. And the rest of the prayer service could be a very strong emotional experience. Again, what do you do with all these prayers if your Hebrew is not good? Recite them in English and add the signature blessing. Whenever you have a blessing, say it in Hebrew. And then, as you become more fluent in the Hebrew, add a few more words before it. A few more. And if you really want to work at it, you can. I have a series of tapes that I made a few years ago. It doesn't correspond to this Siddur, but it corresponds to the Rambam Siddur, but it doesn't matter. Where everything we sing in the service on Saturday morning, on Friday nights, I sing very slowly.
Doesn't sound like you even.
Doesn't sound like me?
No.
Probably with my the
I
pit.
mean, it's so slow that it's just.
Okay,
doesn't-
but you can learn them. You can learn them with the Hebrew, and you can learn them with the transliteration. But learn them; it'll have a profound effect upon you. I didn't get to the Shema. Next week I'll get to the Shema. Hopefully, it won't take the whole time, and we'll start history. Okay.
Rabbi.